This is the Dr. Duke Show.
Everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. I am Dr. Duke, and I am joined today by Dr. Jake Jacobs. Jake.
Shalom, Duke.
Good to see you. Shalom, brother. Nice to have you in studio with us, and we're going to talk about some current event stuff. The left losing its mind, that's kind of what we always talk about, and we start with the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Seems to be an all-around solid guy. He is articulate. He seems smart, humble. But you know what the problem is?
He's a Christian.
He's a Christian. And you know what the bigger problem is? He takes the Bible seriously.
Literally.
You know, we've progressed so much in this country, Jake. We're in a situation now where woke people realize we'll tolerate Christianity just as long as you keep the Bible out of it, right? I mean, Jesus is a good little communist agitator wearing sandals, the long hair. He'd probably smoke a joint with you if he ever wanted, if he ever got a chance to sit down with you. That's okay.
It's a Doobie Brothers singing, Jesus is just all right with me.
Yes.
Yeah.
One toke over the line, Jesus.
As long as he's not actual biblical and real.
And also as long he doesn't have any prohibitions, right? Whatever you wanted. It's as if Jesus said to the woman taken adultery, no one condemns you here, so go ahead and
continue.
Yeah, be as promiscuous as you want. God loves the more people you sexually love. That's the kind of, and trust me, in AI, in about 10 years, when the only way you will be able to access the Gospels will be AI, guarantee you what we just said will be part of it, right? They will rewrite that.
And like I've said for years, wokeism, another term for wokeism is anything goesism. That's exactly what's going on here. Yeah. The left hates the fact that this new Speaker of the House absolutely believes in absolute truth, believes in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, believes in the Judeo-Christian worldview, believes that the foundation of our republic under God actually is Christianity. That's a historical fact.
And it took the current Speaker of the White House, right? Jean-Paul, what's her name?
Jean-Pierre. Yeah.
It took her in her incompetence to make Jen Psaki, the former one, look actually normally intelligent. So Psaki is an idiot. But here's what I want to show you the video of what she says about Mike Johnson as the new Speaker for the Republicans in the Congress. Go ahead, Mike.
So let's take a few minutes to talk about this new Speaker. First glance, Mike Johnson does seem fine-ish. Conservative, yes, but he once started a civility caucus with a Democrat. And I mean, if nothing else, he wears a suit and has glasses. How threatening can this guy actually be? Well, he gave us all a little clue as to how he would govern in an interview this week.
I am a Bible-believing Christian. Someone asked me today in the media, they said, it's curious, people are curious, what does Mike Johnson think about any issue under the sun? I said, well, go pick up a Bible off your shelf and read it. That's my worldview.
You heard that right. The Bible doesn't just inform his worldview, it is his worldview. In fact, during his first speech in his new job, Johnson suggested that his election as Speaker was an act of God. Talk about a bit of a humble brag there. So what exactly has God apparently called on Mike Johnson to do? Well, his views on policy are essentially what you'd expect from a religious fundamentalist. They're more divisive than they are divine. Prior to his election to Congress in 2016, Johnson spent nearly 2 decades working for the hard-right conservative legal activist group, the Alliance Defending Freedom. It's a group, by the way, that is so right-wing, it was designated a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Don't you just love that she uses this smear group, the Southern Poverty Law Center, to attack the Alliance for Free? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That is a wonderful organization.
Oh, it was founded by evangelical Christians in the 90s.
Right.
I've been to their headquarters in Scottsdale. You know why they created it? They were to counter the lying ACLU and these left-wing organizations,
the Southern Poverty
that were hiring lawyers to pass their left-wing
Yep.
agenda. And this organization is behind the ending of Roe v. Wade. Therefore, they despise
Far
it.
right. Christian
Yes.
fundamentalists.
Fundamentalists.
Talk about that word. word,
this
fundamentalism.
is interesting. If you go back into Christian history about 100, 110 years ago, there were a group of conservative evangelical Christians who said that the church, that the universities, that seminaries are starting to go left. They're becoming liberal. They're denying the deity of Jesus Christ, et cetera, et cetera. So they said we need to stress the fundamentals of the faith. Jesus Christ was born of a virgin. He was God Almighty. He was our Redeemer, our Savior, etc. Well, now they've extrapolated that term fundamentalist to mean it's just like Hamas, it's just like Hezbollah. They're religious fundamentalists who are going to kill all the non-believing Christians in America. We know that's a lie. So they use that term fundamentalist as the way to, in essence, have a derisive attack upon those who actually believe in Jesus Christ. That's what's behind this, Duke. This is a war against Christianity.
But here's the other problem, right? We know that the Hamas, the radical Islamists, that the left, people like Psaki, are supporting in this conflict with Israel. Are they not fundamentalists? I mean, clearly, the Hamas, the Iranians, these are fundamental Islamic people, right? How come there's no criticism of that? How come the same left that wants to go after Mike Johnson for simply believing in the Bible, how come that doesn't disqualify all the lefties who are supporting Hamas? Why aren't they invalidated? Because the ideology they're supporting when they support Hamas is Islamic fundamentalism, which is much more fundamental than anything we see from Christianity.
Dave Horowitz, the brilliant ex-Marxist Jew by the name of Dave Horowitz, has written a book called Strange Alliance. And in essence, he talks about the hardcore left in alliance with fundamentalist Islamists who are actually following the teachings of Muhammad and Abu Bakr's jihadi war, holy war, which in essence subjugated Christians and Jews and Bedouins and millions of people across the Middle East, Northern Africa, all the way into India. And so they are fundamentally following those holy war teachings, and therefore they ignore that and say, in essence, any Christian who believes in the Bible, which, by the way, our founding fathers, the presidents of the United States, what are they sworn in on? Out of all the books in the world, what book are they sworn in on? Barack Obama was, Joe Biden was, President Trump was, George Washington was, the Bible. So stop and think of this inconsistency, this hypocrisy. The very book that our nation was founded upon and that our founders and our presidents have believed in is being maligned by Psaki wine.
Yeah,
right?
and this is the fundamentalist argument, right? So what we've learned from all of this, and we've got another video clip we'll show you of more of this attack on him, people like Bill Maher. Bill Maher, who has lately seemed to have gotten the consequences of fundamentalist progressives and fundamentalist Islamics. He seems to see it, yet notice that his real aim, his powder, is kept dry until you have a conservative Christian in office. We'll get to that in just a moment. But the other problem about fundamentalism is that how close is it? In what short period of time will we arrive at the point where any belief in Christianity is fundamentalism? Any idea? I mean, we're getting there, right? They've already undermined the idea of Christ. They've already undermined Christian values. They've already begun to make the Bible to be a book of hatred, right? It's not about love. It's not about God.
While loving the Quran.
Exactly. Yeah. While demanding that anybody who burns the Quran must pay with their lives, right? And passing in places like London, serious hate crime penalties for insulting Islam, even just with words, right? To speak badly about Islam will get you a world of hurt.
Robert Spencer can't even go to England. The great author of a number of books on Islam and holy war, on the real prophet Muhammad, even a pamphlet I have here called The Violent Oppression of Women in Islam. Robert Spencer, he's outlawed. He cannot fly to England to this day.
Right. Nope. And because you can't offend, well, think about the protests in the streets in London, all across England, the threats to Jews in that country. And you've got, actually, you learned this year, this week that actual British police officers are tearing down public pictures of Jewish hostages. Right? I mean, you got the police doing that. Not the police are not protecting the right of people to show the images of hostages taken by this brutality. No. The police are tearing it down because it offends the sensibilities of Muslims.
They don't tear down what's been happening in Gaza.
Nope.
When there's a bomb that goes off near hospitals or homes and it kills innocent, Gazan children or Palestinian children. They won't tear that down.
No, sir. Take a look at this next clip.
And I was reading about this horrible shooting in Maine.
Yeah.
And I heard, we don't know much about the guy yet, but apparently he heard voices. And I thought, is he that different than Mike Johnson? Really? I mean, degree, yes, but it's thinner than you think.
Yeah, so just worshiping the God of the Bible is the same thing as a demonic, cultic killing of children in the name of deep-seated mental illness. These are now the same things.
See, this is the thing. First of all, that's absolutely disgusting, what he said there. And then what's more disgusting is to see those people laughing along with him. And what really is underneath this is a disdain and hatred for Jesus Christ, Christianity, and the teachings of the Scriptures. That's what it is. That's why they are freaking out about the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, because he dares to say, you know what I'm going to do every day when I go to the House? I'm first going to go to the chapel prayer room where it has Psalm 16:1 about relying upon God Almighty, the God of Israel, and it quotes Abraham Lincoln, one nation under God. God forbid that we have men and women in the United States in Congress who actually believe in our Creator, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And therefore, these leftists, these atheists, this socialist squad types, this Psaki wine types, these hardcore leftists who are atheists by their nature, they disdain and despise what he stands for.
Well, they despise the God of Jews and Christians, but the God of Islam, they go out of their way to to humble themselves before, to protect, to pass laws that you can't criticize, you can't draw a picture, right? To blame anybody who offends the holy book of the Quran, right, is going to pay outrage penalties in Western cultures. Right?
Duke, if I can add to that, I was at a teaching conference in 1989 at University of Wisconsin-Madison where they send teachers to teach kids about the propaganda they're pushing on us. And it was an Islamic conference, and I was there for 2 days. The first day, I bit my tongue. I didn't say a word. I just observed. They were giving out a Quran and these books about how wonderful and peaceful Islam is. Second day, I raised my hand and I asked the teachers, the professors there, why haven't you been teaching us about jihad? Why haven't you been teaching us about the military offensive, the battles, the dozens and dozens and dozens of battles by Muhammad, Abu Bakr, and the caliphs that conquered and subjugated literally millions of Christians and Jews and others throughout? You would have thought that Adolf Hitler walked in the room, because they turned on me immediately because I dared to bring up historical truth and theological reality of Islam.
Did they remove you from the room?
No, they put up with me, but in essence, they were telling me to shut up. And so I saw this back in the late 1980s.
We're going to take a break now and come back and look at, related to this story, we'll talk about what's going on at the United Nations with Iran, the terrorist state in the world, and also fundamentalist Islamic. We'll be right back. Back again with Jake Jacobs, and we're talking about fundamentalism, how the left is piling on new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, because he actually is a believing Bible Christian. And so consequently, this is fundamentalism. We got to get rid of this. And as we pointed out, Jake, in the first segment, when whatever you say and whatever you dislike about Christianity, there is nothing quite so fundamentalist as these supporters of Islam. Talk about literal believers who hear the voice of the prophet, who have no tolerance for other ways of seeing it. That's not fundamentalism. That's right. That's
salam,
that's
peace.
The religion of peace, yes.
Yes.
So Iran, we've got a great story here about what Iran is doing at the United Nations. Talk about this, and I know we've got some video as well.
just unbelievable. One of the leaders in Iran has been chosen to be on their chair for human rights and social forum. I mean, this is absolutely insane. Here it is. His name is Ali Bahraini. This guy right here. This is one of the top officials in the Islamic Republic of Iran that cries out death to Israel, death to America. I can remember when UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, under President Donald Trump, pulled out of that organization, saying it was full of hypocrisy and anti-Israel sentiment. And they pulled out. And I was incredibly happy over that. And then Biden comes into office. He goes right back into it.
Take a look at some video.
Mr. President, we meet here at the United Nations on the eve of the first anniversary of the death of Mahsa Amini while in custody of the morality police in Tehran. In the days and months that followed, in cities across Iran, a mass movement of brave women and men rose up in protest under the banner of woman, life, freedom to demand an end to the trampling of their basic human rights. The Council is aware that the peaceful protesters were met with a brutal crackdown by security forces, with hundreds killed and many thousands injured and arrested. On November 24th, this Council met in urgent session and condemned Iran's arbitrary arrests, excessive use of force, torture, enforced disappearances, and sexual abuse of women protesters. This Council is also aware that the two journalists who first reported the death of Mahsa Amini, Nilufar Hamidi and Elahe Mohammadi, are still in prison, and that thousands of schoolgirls were hospitalized for poisoning by toxic gas. Therefore, Mr. President, we have to ask, on what basis did this Council appoint the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran as chair of this UN Human Rights Council's social forum starting on November 2nd? We ask the United Nations, how can you elevate and celebrate a government that beats, blinds, tortures, and rapes women for the crime of demanding their basic human rights? Where is the logic? Where is the morality?
So take a look at the picture of this fellow. This is actually the Hillel Nur, the executive director of UN Watch, speaking truth to power to the UN, pointing out that this Iranian regime, this proxy war that Hamas is fighting on behalf of Iran, calling out the brutality, the rape, the imprisonment, the poisoning of dissidents in Iran. These are the people who the left and the UN are arguing have the high road in the conflict in Palestine.
Duke, I just saw a tweet there. I didn't get a chance to read it all. Is there any chance you could read that for the audience?
Sure. This is from Hillel Nur. I asked the UN, quote, why did you name the Islamic Republic of Iran as chair of the UN Human Rights Council Social Forum starting on November 2nd? Convenient, right? How can you elevate the regime that beats, blinds, tortures, and rapes women who demand their rights? Where is the logic? Where is the morality?
Well, I got to tell you something. John Birch Society. The John Birch Society, since its inception, since its creation, has been exposing the corruption within the United Nations. By the way, I'd highly recommend their New American magazine. Here's one, the New American, the UN's New World Religion. Right here, the UN's gallery, socialist, communist, terrorists, globalists run the show. Antonio Guterres, who you know, used to be a member of the radical Portuguese Marxist Party. John Birch has been out doing this for years. The grasp of Socialist International, the corruption of the United Nations. When they created the UN Security Council in 1945, the Soviet Union became an immediate member. 1971, the Communist Chinese became a member of the Security Council in the hands of totalitarian, authoritarian monsters. We should have pulled out of the United Nations and gotten that building out of Manhattan 50, 70 years ago.
And wouldn't it be more effective if you got rid of the United Nations and had some loose alliance of all free nations, right?
Touche.
And you cannot get into it, and you will be removed if you become authoritarian. Right? That would be the obvious thing to do, it would be an allied group to combat what is increasingly becoming the axis of evil in the modern world. You've got China and Russia lockstep with North Korea. Now they're supporting Iran. Now they're supporting Hamas. I'm telling you, it's getting ugly, and the Western world needs to wake up to this. The United Nations is not a force for peace. It is actually is pushing us closer to dangerous war by its immorality.
You and I have talked in other shows about the Great Reset, which is not a conspiracy. I've read Klaus Schwab's works, The Great Reset, and he works in collusion with the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, the head of the World Health Organization, who is a Marxist, right? And the European Union. I'm telling you, this is a conglomeration of organizations that are about centralism, about centrism, about globalism, and their anti-American sovereignty. And it's not a coincidence that, you know what they have in common? Their hatred of the Jews, of Israel, and the United States of America.
Yep. And there's our man, the man we're talking about at the United Nations. Isn't it interesting that you've got Iran on these committees? You've got women's committees and human rights committees in which you've got North Koreans and you've got Cubans and Venezuelans on them. They go out of their way to populate their so-called global impact commissions with communists, Marxists, anti-Jews, anti-Semites.
These are the foxes protecting the chicken coop. I got to reiterate again, if people want to educate themselves, you could go on YouTube and find Robert Spencer. This comes to the David Horowitz Center, The Violent Oppression of Women in Islam. And what blows me away in all these demonstrations at Harvard and Chicago and London and across the world, you see these signs, it's like, Women for Palestine or Queers for Palestine, all this. And if they were in Gaza right now, they'd be cutting off their heads like the Jewish women that they killed on October 7th. They literally cut the heads off of many, many Jewish women, Jewish babies, and brought those heads back to Gaza.
In another program, I made the observation that what do you think would happen if Gaza, Hamas, had attacked a gay Jewish discotheque and murdered 300 or 400 gay Jews? Do you think the LGBTQ would still be saying that they were innocent?
That's right.
I no way, no how. And this is the problem. We have one more short story for you. And so in the name of sanity, we must bring you this story. Calls are already coming in for UN leader's resignation. They intensify after his shameful comments about Hamas and attacks on Israel.
You know, it's interesting. He talked about, something to the effect, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that Hamas wasn't created in a vacuum.
Yep.
Like, if you understood the oppression of Hamas for the last 75 years, then you would understand why they raped and pillaged and decapitated dozens and dozens of Jewish women and babies. I mean, Duke, I can't repeat exactly what they did to those Jews. It is something from the pit of hell. It is so despicable and diabolical.
And what's worse about it is how joyfully it was undertaken. They're laughing, they're giggling.
They're calling their parents
and bragging, I killed 10 Jews today. Unbelievable. Here's what he said, basically. He said, the Hamas attacks did not happen in a vacuum. And, quote, Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation. And of course, that's not true.
This is interesting because even the whole refugee situation back in 1948 has been under Palestinian lies and propaganda. The fact of the matter is that the United Nations had a two-partition plan. It was rejected by the Arab nations, the 22 Arab nations surrounding Israel, as they're calling for the invasion, the extermination of the Jews. In 1949, it was rejected. In 1956, in 1967, in 1973. In the year 2000, even Bill Clinton was complaining about Yasser Arafat. They said, we gave him like 97%, 98% of what they wanted, and they still said no.
And don't forget that the Gaza Strip exists in Palestinian hands because the Jews handed it to them and pulled their own people pulled down settlements so that they would get for that concession peace. And ever since they did it, there has been no peace.
And by the way, Hamas and the radicals within Gaza, they're destroying historical artifacts of Judaism within that area because they want to eliminate Judaism, the mother of Christianity.
Asking Israel to stand down or pause is empowering genocide against the Jews. There's no two ways about it. And that's going to wrap up this show. If you enjoy the program, please subscribe to our audio podcast. Simply search Dr. Duke Show on your favorite free podcast platform. And if you're on Rumble, please follow our Rumble channel at rumble.com/Freedom Project. For all of us at the show, thanks. And for Jake Jacobs,
Shalom, shalom.
we'll see you next time.